Nobody ever bothered to connect. Her small hands, usually so expressive, formed the signs of confession with agonizing slowness, as if even the faintest glimmer of hope had been extinguished. Inside the grand ballroom, a kaleidoscope of balloons bobbed and weaved amidst peals of laughter, and the joyous shrieks of children chasing after vibrant ribbons. Yet, against the wall, two identical little girls, adorned in matching red dresses, were pressed as flat as possible, their presence unnoticed, ghosts in their own lives. Parents, lost in the moment, clicked away with their cameras. Executives, celebrating another year of success, made constant toasts with champagne flutes. The CEO, hostess of this elaborate celebration, never once cast a glance toward her own deaf daughters, two little souls who watched the revelry with the detached sadness of mourners at their own wake. They were unseen, unheard. Those few who did happen to notice them didn't seem to care. Except for one man, Vincent Parker, a single dad worn down by life, was making his way with a cleaning cart. He knew the sting of invisibility, of being ignored until you felt like you'd simply faded away. He had every reason to keep his head down, to avoid the memories that the graceful dance of sign language always dragged back to the forefront of his mind. But something in their eyes, a quiet surrender that echoed his own past, tugged at him, pulling him across the crowded room. A single word, a single hesitant gesture. Hello. That simple greeting would become a seismic event, shattering the carefully constructed walls around 5 wounded hearts and letting the radiant light of hope stream in. Before we dive into their story, tell us, where in the world are you reading from? We're always amazed to see how far these stories travel. Vincent's body screamed in protest as he emptied yet another overflowing trash bin near the noisy activity stations. 3 hours of fitful sleep, demanding construction work from 7 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon. And now, this unexpected emergency shift, covering the annual Whitmore Industries fundraiser because Jerry had conveniently called in sick. Vincent desperately needed every dollar he could scrape together. The drab fabric of his janitor uniform felt oppressively heavy. His hands ached with a deep, bone-weary fatigue. At 35, he felt 70. The atrium had been transformed into a whimsical carnival for kids. A face-painting booth buzzed with activity. Balloon animals sprouted from thin air. Games of skill and chance tempted young hands. And a small, surprisingly fragrant petting zoo occupied a corner. Dozens of children ran wild, their unrestrained laughter bouncing off the towering glass ceiling. Whitmore Industries executives, dressed in their finest, navigated the throng with practiced ease, shaking hands with donors, posing for photos with beaming families. The whole scene radiated an almost blinding aura of success and carefree joy. Vincent kept his gaze lowered, striving for invisibility. That's how he preferred to exist. Then he saw them. 2 small girls sat huddled together on the floor against the far wall, their knees drawn up to their chests, their eyes fixed on the swirling chaos with expressions that squeezed Vincent's heart. Identical twins, maybe 6 years old, with cascades of long, fiery ginger hair tumbling over matching red dresses. They were perfectly still, islands of quiet in a sea of frenzy. Children raced past without a glance. Adults stepped around them as if they were merely pieces of furniture. Vincent watched as a group of kids, squealing with delight, dashed past the twins. For a fleeting moment, the twins' eyes flickered with hopeful anticipation. Then, the children disappeared toward the face-painting booth, oblivious to the girls' existence. The twins' faces crumpled, their expressions reverting to that soul-crushing resignation. Vincent's feet began to move almost of their own accord, his brain playing catch-up. He abandoned his cleaning cart. As he drew closer, he noticed the tiny, flesh-colored devices nestled in their ears. Hearing aids. Understanding washed over him like a cold wave. They were deaf. Every self-preservation instinct screamed at him to turn around. Walk away. Don't get involved. Sign language meant remembering Evelyn. Her hands, graceful and quick, flying through conversations. Her silent laugh, a melody he could still hear in his mind. The way she'd sign, "I love you," before drifting off to sleep every night. It meant remembering who he used to be before grief had buried that man alive. He stopped walking, his muscles rigid, his hands clenched into fists. But then one of the twins looked directly at him, and Vincent saw something in her gaze that shattered every defensive wall he'd so painstakingly erected. It wasn't just loneliness. It was the acceptance of loneliness. These children had already learned, at the tender age of 6, that they didn't matter. What would Evelyn do? The thought struck him like a physical blow. His wife would have sat with them, made them laugh, reminded them that they were worthy of being seen. Vincent took a shaky breath. When had he become someone who walked away from children who needed exactly what he could give? He lowered himself to the floor beside them, ignoring the sharp protest of his aching back and the curious stares from the executives who probably wondered why the janitor was fraternizing with the guests. Both girls startled, their eyes widening with surprise that an adult had actually acknowledged them. Vincent's hands felt stiff and clumsy as they formed signs he hadn't used in 3 years. But muscle memory, that faithful companion, took over. "Hello, my name's Vincent. What are your names?" The twins' mouths fell open in matching O shapes. They exchanged a glance, as if confirming they were really seeing this, an adult speaking their language. Slowly, hesitantly, the girl on the left signed back, her small hands tentative. "I'm Sky. This is Moon. Those are beautiful names. Why are you sitting here all alone?" Moon's hands moved with a heartbreaking matter-of-factness. "Nobody talks to us. They never do." The words, or rather the signs, hit Vincent like a sledgehammer. These children, at 6 years old, had accepted invisibility as their permanent condition. "Not today." "Well, I talked to you," Vincent signed, feeling something crack open in his chest, something he'd kept locked tight for 3 long years. "And I have an important question. Do you know why elephants never forget?" Both twins shook their heads, a mixture of confusion and curiosity in their eyes, because nobody ever told them anything worth remembering. It was a terrible joke, the kind Vincent used to tell his ASL students to break the ice back when he was a teacher, back when he was someone else entirely. But Moon's usually serious face cracked into the smallest of smiles. Sky's eyes lit up as if someone had flipped a switch. "That's silly," Sky signed. But she was grinning. "You think that's silly? Wait until you see my dad dance." Before they could respond, Vincent launched into the most embarrassing dad moves he could muster while remaining seated. Exaggerated shoulder shirmais, ridiculous hand waves, a seated version of the running man. The twins stared for a shocked moment, then their faces transformed. Giggles bubbled up, then full, silent laughter, their small bodies shaking with pure, unadulterated joy. Vincent kept going. He told them about the time he tried to teach a dog sign language, and the dog just licked his hands. He pretended to be a confused penguin trying to fly. He made funny faces that had Moon clutching her stomach. For the first time in 3 years, Vincent's hands didn't feel heavy. They felt right. The commotion drew every eye. Parents paused mid-photo. Children froze with paintbrushes in hand. At the edge of the lavish celebration, a single, exhausted janitor, Vincent Parker, a single dad, had 2 little girls in matching red dresses doubled over in laughter. Their laughter rang out, clear and loud, echoing down the hall above the balloons and chatter, even though they couldn't hear the sound themselves. Their ponytails whipped, their shoulders shook, their laughter flew like bright sparks in the air. All eyes turned. Event staff whispered to each other, pointing across the atrium. Megan Whitmore stood frozen mid-sentence, her carefully crafted pitch to a potential investor dying on her lips. She'd been so focused on closing this deal, on maintaining the company her late husband had built, on keeping everything under control, because control was the only thing preventing her from falling apart completely. But now her daughters, her precious Moon and Sky, were laughing. Really laughing. The way they hadn't since before the accident 18 months ago that had killed their father and stolen their hearing, leaving their voices hushed ever since. Megan watched this janitor sign fluently, his expressions animated and warm. She watched her daughters light up like stars, their hands flying in conversation, their faces radiating pure joy. He was doing what she should be doing, what she'd failed to do, despite all the tutors and classes and expensive therapists. Shame burned through her chest like acid. The investor said something. Megan didn't hear it. She excused herself and walked toward her daughters, her heels clicking on the polished floor with each step. Vincent noticed her approaching, a tall woman in a designer suit that probably cost more than his monthly rent. Her long brown hair was perfectly styled, her face carefully composed. When she reached them, Moon and Sky's laughter faded. They sat up straighter, their joy dimming. That told Vincent everything he needed to know about their relationship. "You speak sign language," Megan said, her voice tight. Not a question. "Yes, ma'am. I was just keeping them company. They're my daughters." Megan's voice was even tighter. "I haven't seen them laugh like that I can't remember how long." The guilt in her eyes was unmistakable. Vincent recognized it. He saw the same thing reflected in his bathroom mirror at 3 in the morning when he wondered if he was failing Elijah. "They're wonderful kids," Vincent said quietly. "Smart, funny. They just needed someone to talk to them. I should be able to do that." The words came out raw, edged with pain. Vincent started to respond, but Megan shook her head. "I need to talk to you after the event. Please." The fundraiser ended at 7. Vincent was collecting his supplies when Megan appeared in the doorway of the storage closet. She'd lost the confident CEO mask. Now she just looked tired. "Can we talk 5 minutes?" They ended up in a quiet corner of the employee break room, the harsh fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Megan sat across from Vincent, her fingers twisting together, a nervous gesture that made her seem human instead of untouchable. "My name is Megan Whitmore. I own this company. Those girls, Moon and Sky, are my daughters." Vincent nodded, waiting. 18 months ago, my husband was driving them home from a birthday party. A tire blew out on the highway. Her voice trembled, cracking on the last word. "James didn't survive. The girls were in the back seat. The impact damaged their hearing almost completely." She swallowed hard, fighting back tears. "They can still use their voices, but after the accident they barely try. Words hurt. Speaking reminds them of what they lost. So now they mostly sign and laugh when they feel safe enough to let joy slip out." "I'm sorry," Vincent said, meaning it with every fiber of his being. He knew that weight, the way loss compressed your chest until breathing felt like a luxury you didn't deserve. "My wife died 3 years ago. Heart failure. She was 36 years old and her heart just stopped. Middle of a Tuesday afternoon while she was making lunch. The memory still had claws, tearing at him. Coming home to find paramedics in her kitchen. Evelyn on the floor. Elijah screaming in the neighbor's arms. She was deaf from birth. We communicated entirely in sign language. I was an ASL teacher at the community center. That's how we met. She came to a workshop I was leading. We built our whole life around that language." Megan asked softly. "I quit 3 months after she died. Couldn't do it anymore. Every sign reminded me of her hands. Every gesture felt like reopening a wound that wouldn't heal." He gestured to his janitor uniform. "Took these jobs instead. Construction during the day, janitorial at night. Been running for 3 years. But you stopped running today." Vincent thought about Moon and Sky's laughter, about how his hands had felt right for the first time since Evelyn died. "Yeah, I guess I did." Megan leaned forward, her eyes pleading. "I want to hire you to teach me sign language properly, to teach me how to communicate with my daughters the way you did today. I'll pay you whatever you want." Vincent started to refuse automatically, but he paused, really thinking about it. Today, when he'd sat with those little girls, he hadn't felt the crushing grief he'd expected. Instead, he'd felt connected to something good. To Evelyn's memory without the pain drowning everything else. To the passion he'd once had for teaching. To the man he used to be. Maybe running wasn't helping. Maybe honoring Evelyn meant doing what she'd loved most. Helping people communicate, building bridges, making deaf children feel seen. Maybe it was time to stop punishing himself for surviving. "I don't want your money, but I'll teach you. Every evening before my night shift, 8 to 10, 2 hours. Relief flooded Megan's face, washing away some of the weariness. Thank you so much. One condition. You bring Moon and Sky to the lessons. This isn't just about you learning signs. It's about rebuilding the connection between the three of you. Tears spilled down Megan's cheeks, unchecked. Okay. Yes, we'll be there. That night, Vincent went home to their small apartment and found Elijah sleeping on the couch, a book open on his chest. His neighbor, Mrs. Chun, had let herself in to watch him, like she did every day. Bless her. Vincent gently shook Elijah awake. Elijah blinked up at him, his brown hair sticking up at odd angles. Dad, you okay? Vincent's hands moved slowly, hesitantly, forming signs he hadn't used with his son in 3 years. I met 2 little girls today. They reminded me that your mom would want me to stop being afraid. I'm going to start teaching sign language again. Elijah's eyes went wide, shining with unshed tears. Then, tears streaming down his face, he signed back. Mom would be happy. Vincent pulled his son into a tight hug. Both of them crying, finally allowing themselves to remember not just the pain of loss, but the beauty of what they'd had. The lessons started the following week. Megan arrived at Whitmore Industries at 8 sharp with Moon and Sky, who practically bounced with excitement when they saw Vincent waiting in the conference room. The first session was awkward. Megan struggled with hand positions, mixing up similar signs, forgetting movements she'd practiced at home. Her daughters watched with patient surprise, clearly shocked their mother was really trying. But she kept showing up every single evening, sometimes straight from important meetings, still in her power suits. Other times in casual clothes, having left work early to pick up the girls herself instead of sending the nanny. Vincent watched her transform. The rigid CEO mask cracked further with each lesson. She laughed at her own mistakes. She lit up when she successfully signed a complete sentence. Most importantly, she started really seeing her daughters, not as problems to solve, but as the funny, smart, loving children they were. Moon taught her the sign for butterfly because Megan mentioned missing the butterflies in their old garden. Sky signed jokes Vincent had taught her, making her mother laugh until tears ran down her face. During their 3rd week, while practicing, Sky's small hands moved deliberately. Mommy, you're getting better. Megan's face crumpled, her carefully constructed composure falling away. I'm so sorry it took me this long. It's okay, Moon signed, her eyes full of forgiveness. You're here now. For weeks into the lessons, Vincent's neighbor, Mrs. Chun, called with bad news. She'd fallen and sprained her ankle, needed to rest for a few days. Vincent's stomach dropped. He couldn't afford to miss work. Elijah couldn't stay home alone. Bring him with you, Megan said when he explained before that evening's lesson. The girls have been asking about him anyway. Vincent hesitated. He'd mentioned Elijah during the lessons. The twins were always curious, signing questions about what he looked like, how old he was, if he knew sign language too. But bringing him felt like mixing his broken personal life with this fragile new thing. Vincent, Megan said gently, it's okay. Really, bring him. So that evening, Vincent arrived with Elijah in tow. His son clutched his backpack straps nervously, eyes huge as they walked through the gleaming lobby with its marble floors and expensive artwork. Dad, this place is really fancy, Elijah whispered, awestruck. Wait until you see the conference room, Vincent said, trying to sound confident even though his heart was hammering. What if the kids didn't get along? What if this was a mistake? When they entered, Moon and Sky were already there, practicing finger spelling. Both twins looked up, and their eyes went huge when they saw the boy with short brown hair standing beside Vincent. This is my son, Elijah, Vincent signed, gently pushing his son forward. Elijah, these are the girls I told you about. Moon and Sky. Elijah stood frozen, and Vincent's chest tightened. His son hadn't really interacted with other kids much since Evelyn died. He'd become quiet, withdrawn, spending most of his time alone reading or drawing. What if, then? Elijah's hands moved slowly, carefully, forming signs Vincent hadn't seen him use in years. Hello, my name is Elijah. Nice to meet you. Moon and Sky's faces exploded with surprise and delight. You know sign language? Sky signed excitedly. My mom taught me, Elijah signed back, and Vincent saw his son's eyes glisten. She was deaf like you. A moment of heavy silence. A shared understanding that only children who'd lost parents could truly comprehend. Then Moon stood up and walked over to Elijah, looking at him with serious eyes. Our dad died, too, in a car accident. My mom's heart stopped working, Elijah signed. I miss her every day. Vincent glanced at Megan and saw tears streaming down her face. Both parents watching their children connect over shared grief in a way that was both heartbreaking and beautiful. Then Sky joined them, and suddenly she was signing something that made Elijah's face light up. Do you want to see us do handstands? We've been practicing. Elijah's face lit up. I can do handstands, too. Just like that, the heaviness lifted. The three children moved to the open space. And suddenly they were attempting handstands, giggling Moon and Sky silently, Elijah out loud, competing to see who could hold the position longest. Vincent and Megan abandoned the lesson plan completely and just watched, amazed. I can also do cartwheels, Elijah signed when they all collapsed on the floor, breathless. Show us, Moon signed eagerly. Elijah demonstrated a wobbly cartwheel that wasn't quite straight but earned enthusiastic applause. Then Sky wanted to try, and Moon insisted she could do it better. And suddenly they were all taking turns, laughing at failures, celebrating successes. I haven't seen him like this in 3 years, Vincent said quietly to Megan, his voice thick with emotion. He's been so sad, so withdrawn. I thought maybe that was just who he was now. They haven't had any friends since the accident, Megan replied, her voice also thick with emotion. Other kids at school don't know how to talk to them. They eat lunch alone, play alone. I thought maybe that was just how it would be. They watched Elijah teach Moon and Sky a clapping game. The three children's hands moving in complicated patterns, stumbling, laughing, trying again. Your dad is funny, Moon signed to Elijah. He told us a joke about elephants. My dad tells terrible jokes, Elijah signed back, grinning. Want to hear the worst one? Both twins nodded eagerly. Why did the bicycle fall over? Because it was too tired. Moon and Sky groaned and laughed simultaneously, and Elijah looked so proud Vincent's heart could have burst. Then Sky got serious, her expression sobering. Do you talk to your mom? Like, still, even though she's gone? Elijah's smile faded, but he nodded. Sometimes at night, I tell her about my day. Dad says it's okay, that she can still hear me somehow. We talk to our dad, too, Moon signed. Mom says he's watching over us. Maybe they're together up there. Maybe they're friends now. The simplicity and hopefulness of it, that their lost parents might be friends somewhere, made both Vincent and Megan turn away to wipe their eyes. As the evening wound down, the three children were inseparable. They exchanged favorite colors, Elijah, blue, Moon, purple, Sky, yellow. Favorite foods? Unanimous agreement that pizza was supreme. Favorite animals? A lengthy debate between dolphins, tigers, and penguins. Can Elijah come back next time? Moon asked her mother, her small face hopeful. Megan looked at Vincent, who nodded, a warm smile spreading across his face. I think that can be arranged. When it was time to leave, all three children hugged goodbye, Sky holding on to Elijah extra long, making him blush. As Vincent and Elijah walked to the parking lot, his son slipped his hand into Vincent's, something he hadn't done since he was 5. Dad, Elijah said quietly, those girls are really nice. Can we see them again? Not just at lessons. Vincent looked down at his son, at the hope blooming in his eyes, at the faint smile still on his lips. Yeah, buddy, we definitely can. That night, after Elijah fell asleep, Vincent sat in the dark living room and cried, but not tears of grief this time. Tears of relief, of gratitude, of something that felt dangerously close to hope. His son had laughed today, had made friends, had remembered his mother without drowning in sadness. Maybe they were both finally learning to live again. After that evening, everything changed. Elijah came to every lesson, and the lessons evolved into something more. Family time. Megan started bringing dinner, and they'd all eat together in the conference room, the children chattering in sign language while the adults looked on with full hearts. Vincent started turning down construction shifts. The money was tighter, but Elijah needed him present more than he needed extra cash. And when Megan found out, she didn't just offer him money. She created a real job, ASL coordinator for Whitmore Industries' new accessibility program. It's a real job, she said when Vincent tried to refuse. Salary, benefits, health insurance, regular hours. You'll develop training programs, work with our HR department, help us become a truly inclusive workplace. Megan, I can't. Yes, you can, and you should, because you're good at this, Vincent. You're good at building bridges, and you deserve stability. Elijah deserves a father who isn't exhausted all the time. So Vincent accepted. For the first time in 3 years, he could breathe, could be present for his son, could sleep more than 3 hours a night. The romance between him and Megan grew gradually, like spring after a brutal winter. Quiet conversations after the children fell asleep during movie nights at Megan's house. Coffee meetings that stopped being about sign language and started being about everything else. Stolen glances across conference tables. Hands brushing when they both reached for the same teaching material. Neither of them rushed it. They'd both been married before, both carried ghosts that deserved respect. But slowly, carefully, they built something new. 5 months after that first fundraiser, they were all at Megan's house on a Saturday night. The children were in the living room, Elijah teaching Moon and Sky a complicated card game while they taught him a board game they loved. Megan was in the kitchen, and Vincent found himself standing in the doorway, watching his son laugh with the twins. For the first time in 3 years, he felt whole, not healed. Grief didn't work that way. Evelyn's absence would always be a tender place in his heart. But he'd stopped running from it. He'd learned to carry it alongside the new joy filling his life. Megan appeared beside him, slipping her hand into his, her fingers interlacing with his. Happy. She signed with her free hand, her eyes sparkling with a joy that mirrored his own. Yes, Vincent signed back, his heart overflowing. Finally, that night, after all 3 kids fell asleep in sleeping bags in the living room after an impromptu camping-themed movie night, Megan and Vincent sat on the back porch under a blanket of stars. I never thought I'd feel this again, Megan whispered, her voice filled with wonder. Complete. Me neither. But maybe that's what second chances look like. Not replacing what we lost, but building something new alongside those memories. Megan leaned her head on his shoulder, a comfortable silence settling between them. James would have liked you. Evelyn would have loved you. Probably would have hit me if she knew I'd been running from sign language for 3 years. Megan laughed softly, the sound like music in the night air. She sounds like she was amazing. She was, and so was James, from everything you've told me. I think they'd be happy we found each other. They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the crickets and distant traffic. 2 broken people who'd somehow managed to fit their jagged pieces together in a way that worked. 24 months after that fateful fundraiser, Vincent stood in Megan's backyard wearing a suit that actually fit for once, his heart pounding as guests took their seats in neat rows. Elijah stood beside him in a matching suit, fidgeting with his tie, his eyes wide with anticipation. You nervous, Dad? Elijah signed, a mischievous grin playing on his lips. Terrified, Vincent signed back, unable to suppress a chuckle. Good. Terrified though, Elijah signed. Honestly. Moon and Sky appeared in matching pink dresses, carrying small bouquets of wildflowers, their faces glowing with excitement. They took their places on the other side of the aisle, and then the music started, soft and sweet, filling the air with a melody of hope and new beginnings. Megan appeared at the far end of the aisle, a vision in a simple white dress, a bouquet of wildflowers clutched in her hand. Her face radiated a joy that had been painstakingly cultivated over 2 years, a joy that bloomed from the ashes of grief, and was worth every tear, every moment of doubt, every whispered prayer. The ceremony itself was a fleeting, beautiful blur. The officiant's words washed over Vincent, a comforting murmur, but his focus remained solely on Megan, on the 3 children standing as their witnesses, Moon, Sky, and Elijah, a testament to the improbable, resilient family they had forged from fragments. As Megan recited her vows, her hands danced with graceful precision, translating her spoken words into the eloquent language of sign. Her voice, though soft, resonated with unwavering strength. Vincent, she signed and spoke. You taught me that simply showing up, being present, is an act of profound courage. You taught me that learning someone's language, truly understanding it, is an act of the deepest love. You gave me back my daughters, and you gave them the steadfast friend they needed in Elijah. You gave us all permission to grieve what we had lost, to acknowledge the gaping holes in our hearts, while still choosing to build something beautiful, something new, from the remaining pieces. Vincent's hands trembled as he signed his own vows, the emotion threatening to overwhelm him. Megan, he signed and spoke, his voice thick with gratitude. You taught me that running from pain doesn't diminish it. It merely allows it to fester, to steal the good things, too. You and your daughters reminded me that my hands were meant for building bridges, not erecting walls to keep people out. You gave Elijah back his laughter, the sparkle in his eyes. You gave us all a reason to stop merely surviving, to finally breathe, to truly live again. The officiant pronounced them husband and wife, and as they sealed their vows with a kiss, a chorus of small hands rose to the side, signing "I love you" in perfect, heartwarming unison. Elijah, moon, and sky, siblings bound not by blood, but by a love forged in shared experiences, in mutual healing. The reception unfolded as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the lawn. String lights twinkled, creating a magical atmosphere as Vincent watched the three children chase each other across the yard, their joyous laughter echoing through the air. Megan stood beside him, her hand nestled in his, a silent acknowledgement of the improbable beauty of their reality. 2 years ago, I was invisible, Vincent confessed softly, his voice barely a whisper. Just a janitor pushing a cart, trying desperately not to remember the man I used to be, the life I had lost. 2 years ago, I was drowning, Megan replied, her voice equally soft, so focused on maintaining control that I was blind to the fact that my daughters were drowning right alongside me. Megan squeezed his hand, her eyes shining with unshed tears. And now, she said, a radiant smile gracing her lips. Now we're exactly where we're supposed to be. Vincent's mind drifted back to that fateful fundraiser, to 2 small girls huddled against a wall, trying to disappear. He thought of the conscious choice he had made to approach them, to offer a simple hello in sign language instead of walking away. That single act, born of instinct and compassion, had cracked open 5 broken lives, allowing light to flood in. They had all been shattered, adrift in their own private sorrows. But in finding each other, they had discovered the profound truth that broken pieces, when carefully reassembled with love and understanding, could create something infinitely more beautiful than what had been before. Not because they had forgotten their losses, but because they had chosen to honor those losses by embracing life, by loving fearlessly, and by remembering that sometimes the most powerful act is to refuse to remain invisible, both for ourselves and for those who desperately need someone to finally see them. As the evening drew to a close, Vincent gathered all 3 children into a tight embrace. Megan's arms wrapped around them, completing the circle, and he felt Evelyn's presence, a gentle whisper in the evening breeze. Not sad, not gone, but quietly, eternally proud. Asterisk, you did good. Asterisk, he could almost hear her signing, her hands graceful and sure. Asterisk, you all did so good. And for the first time since that devastating Tuesday 4 years ago when her heart had stopped beating, Vincent allowed himself to truly believe it. If the story resonated within you, if it stirred a memory of second chances, if it whispered that brokenness is not synonymous with irreparable, if it reminded you that sometimes all it takes is for someone to truly see you, please don't let its impact end here. Let it serve as a reminder that kindness remains a potent force, that compassion can still alter destinies, and that hope is never a wasted investment. Subscribe and become a cherished member of our Soul Lift Stories family, where each narrative uplifts the spirit and reminds us that light, in its myriad forms, always finds its way back into the darkness. And if this moment has moved you, share it widely, for sometimes, sharing hope is the most profoundly kind act we can offer the world.